3.5 grand, you can get one of these. Again, riddled with issues, but to the untrained eye, you look like a Russian drug dealer, and Russian drug dealers have a lot of money. Hey guys, it's Joel, and welcome back to the channel, and an absolutely glorious day here in the Surrey countryside. For those of you in America, well, actually it's 27 degrees Celsius today, which is around 78, 79 Fahrenheit. I think that's about right. So for those of you stateside, you'll know exactly how warm it is. For us in May, that is absolutely sublime, and I'm very much enjoying it, namely because I have come out in the Z4 today to film yet another video for you guys. On Twitter last week or so, I asked you guys if you'd like to see me doing a video where I go through my favorites on Autotrader. And well, that tweet got a good response, and I thought this would make a fantastic video. So for those of you that don't know, Autotrader is, I guess, the sort of sales marketplace for cars, motorbikes, vans, basically all things cars though, at least in the United Kingdom. I think it's worldwide, but I know that it's sort of the go-to platform over here, whereas in other countries and regions, it may be slightly different. But Autotrader is the first place I will go if I'm looking for certain cars. And in fact, it is a pastime of mine at all times. I'm always looking at certain cars, even if I'm not even looking to buy them. I just like to keep an eye on prices, specs of vehicles that I like. And actually now during the lockdown and the whole COVID situation we've been in, it's been something that I've been doing increasingly more. And because I knew I was filming this video, I did spend a good amount of time this morning going through some others and adding to the list. But there's maybe 20 or so cars on there, which I have favorited over the past, well, months and quarters. Lots of which have already sold, so they've been removed. But we'll go through basically the gist of the sort of cars that I would like to own, potentially next or potentially in the future. So anyway, without further ado, what I'm going to do is get my phone out now where I've got Autotrader and everything saved, and I will screen record that for you, so on the screen somewhere you'll be able to see exactly what I'm looking at. Anyway, let's jump straight into it. So then these are, well, I've got 31 saved adverts in here. So 31 cars which I've got saved, which they're all ones that I love the spec of. They all might be cars that I love, but these are particular ones which I think the spec is great. So they're in the order they are in is literally just how long it is since I've favorited them. So you'll find groups of cars here. Obviously at the top, Jaguar F-Type. Now this is a car I've always loved. A previous friend of mine, Seen Through Glass, Sam, Seen Through Glass, I used to work for him. He famously had a Jaguar F-Type V8, I think it's supercharged V8, several years back. Actually got rid of that just before I started working with him. And that was the coupe. But I actually really like the Roadsters. Obviously, I'm a Roadster / soft top fan, and they are slightly cheaper. Now, it is a car I would definitely like to own. The first one, obviously at the top here, is a V8 S. This is the one, if you go down, you can go on to, you should be able to go on to tech specs and performance. You've got 488 brake horsepower. It's a monstrous car, but I think you can get one which is 550. Anyway, this is the V8, and these are relatively, this is about as cheap as they get for a V8 Roadster. So this is £31,500, which is around, I guess, 45,000 US. And it's in a stunning colour with a really nice dark interior. And I think these are just beautiful looking cars. So the sound they create is awesome. And it's a car I would love to own one day. Next up is another F-Type, but a much more sensible V6 quick shift. Now these are still super fast. Let's just double check that. I think they're around 340 brake horsepower. Still ample power, good amount of torque. And this one is £22,000. Now I think I saved this one more because of the price as opposed to the spec, but an equally good looking car. Obviously it doesn't sound quite as good as a V8. It's not quite as fast, but it would be more economical. It looks basically the same. And for 22 grand, can you get anything much better? I mean, we'll get into that, but I don't know. What are your opinions on the F-Type? Let me know below, guys. Now, next up, no secrets. This is a car that I'm actually actively looking at the moment as a potential, not replacement for this, but a potential second car to use every day. So, of course, a Mercedes-Benz A45 AMG. This is a pre-facelift model. It's 2013, I want to say. 2013. And as you can see, with 62,000 miles on the clock, it's only 18 grand. And that is a lot of car for the money. I don't think anyone can dispute that. The looks aren't to everyone's taste. I think for me it would have to be the aero pack, just because it's a little bit more raucous, I suppose. I have driven one of these cars. They are fantastic. Well, they're certainly fantastic in terms of performance. I don't think they're the best handling cars. But as a daily, this could be something really interesting and also a good car for YouTube, I think, because there's a big following around these cars. It will be a lot more comfortable than this Z4 to use every day. It's still fast and exciting because of the aero pack, and there's a lot I could do to it. So potentially an A45 could be a car that I get at some point, probably when we're out of this mess, might even be next year now. But yeah, it might not be a popular choice with a load of you sort of Z4 owners such as myself, but I'm sort of at the stage, I'm still really young, I want to try other types of car. Never been a hatchback fan, I have to say, but something like this at that price, on a finance deal, of course, they've already done most of their depreciation. Certainly one like this, which is lower end of the market, might not depreciate too much. It could be a good proposition. Again, I'd be interested to know your thoughts. I'm not categorically saying I'm buying an A45. There'll be a video when I decide that, don't worry. But yeah, what do you think? I think something like this could be quite cool. Anyway, we should move on because I'm spending a long time on cars here. This is an interesting one. Maserati Gran Turismo, £19,000. Now, again, I'll confess, I chose this one not really because of the spec, although I do quite like the tan interior with the blue paintwork, but I chose it more because of the price. 19 grand is about as cheap as it gets for these, 67,000 miles on the car. First thing everyone will say is, yeah, but the maintenance would be ridiculous, and I agree. However, if you could get one that's been looked after, it's had sort of all of its stuff done for a year, drive it for a year and not have any problems, you could, you know, have a pretty good year of owning a Maserati and basically get the money back that you paid for it. That's the reason I've saved this car, because I love them. I think they're incredible value. Back onto sound, this has got to be on par, if not better than the F-Type. It's got that Italian Ferrari-derived V8 sound, and if you get one of these grey with red interior, black wheels, it looks stunning as well, although it is a beautiful car regardless. So yeah, 19 grand for a Maserati Gran Turismo. Yes, I'm sure they're riddled with this, that and the other, but it's almost like a Ferrari, I suppose, and still relatively modern, 2008, newer than this. So yeah, Maserati Gran Turismos I've always had my eye on. Next up is another car which, again, fits into the sort of, is there anything better for this price point type thing. 20 grand will now get you a high mileage, admittedly, Aston Martin V8 Vantage. That is amazing. I mean, it's an Aston Martin. That is a brand that obviously carries so much prestige. And for a relatively modern, again, 2006 Vantage, this, bearing in mind, is basically the shape of car they continued until 2019 when the latest Vantage came out. So to the untrained eye, if they see you driving around in one of these and they don't understand number plates, they're going to think you've got a £100,000 Aston Martin. Now that, I won't lie, that is one good reason to buy an Aston Martin. It is the image that it gives off. But again, it's always what I talk about. Sound, these cars, if you've never heard of V8 Vantage, I think the 4.7, which came a bit later, sounds slightly better, but the 4.3 nonetheless sounds incredible out of the box before you've done any mods to it. And obviously if I had my way with it and straight piped it, I'm sure it would just sound absurd. But bottom line, it's an Aston Martin. Now again, such as with the Maserati, maintenance on these things are crazy. I mean, I know a clutch job can be 5 grand in some cases. So if I was going to buy one of these, I would obviously have to find one that's sort of had all of the big stuff done. And again, with that notion of keeping it for maybe a year, limiting the mileage, and sort of praying that nothing catastrophic goes wrong. But yeah, that one is saved because it's the cheapest, but one's a bit more to my spec is like this one for 25 grand in the sort of, I guess, a graphite grey. It'll probably tell me here somewhere. Yeah, I can't see it right there. It's, in my opinion, not everyone's taste, but a stunning car, an absolutely stunning car, and there's a few of those saved on here. Next up, another car, Porsche 911. Again, around the 20 grand bracket. This one's 24 grand. Oh, and this is stunning. It's got the dark tan interior, black exterior, black 5-spoke wheels, and it's the 997 Carrera S Cabriolet. The main reason for one of these is I think they just look beautiful. I actually prefer the coupes, but this one really caught my eye with the tan interior. Yeah, I'm not really much to say about this. I've never experienced a 997 911, but I have the 987 Boxster and the 996 911. I love the way these things look. And of course I could drive one and realise it's not for me. But I just think it's a beautiful car and one that I would love to have in my collection. What collection? One that I'd love to own one day. Let me know what you guys think. Now this is interesting. As you can see, this is a 2007 BMW 7 Series. This is a 750i, which is a 4.8 litre V8. It's actually pretty, I think it's like 365 brake horsepower. High mileage, of course, but absolutely stunning. Dark blue, tan interior, pristine, absolutely pristine as it says here. And I think I have spoken about this before and it's not slipped my mind, but I talked about a little while back before this whole coronavirus situation unfolded about getting a project car, a really cheap V8 basically. That was the idea behind it. And what I narrowed it down to was a 7 Series of this generation. Now some might say, oh, you should go for the generation before because it's more beautiful and iconic, but I've always had a soft spot for this generation, even though it's bloody vulgar, let's be honest. It's not an attractive car, but this one's actually on the higher side of pricing. For £3.5 grand, you can get one of these. Again, riddled with issues, but to the untrained eye, you look like a Russian drug dealer, and Russian drug dealers have a lot of money. So you certainly carry a little bit of prestige driving around in one of these. You know, lists, these would have been 80 grand back in the day, over 6 figures in today's pennies. And if you get one of these straight pipes, they just sound the nuts. This one's a little bit cheaper. This is a 35i, still a V8, just much less brake horsepower, around 260 for 3 grand. And there was one that I was tracking a while back and very nearly bought, which was 1,400 quid for a 745i. Let me know what you would think about that. Again, wouldn't be a replacement to the Z4. It would be an additional car that I just have a bit of fun with on the channel. So I think that's really the way forward, isn't it? Getting a few different cars and doing some bits with them. So if I could pick up an old 7 Series for 1,500 quid, I mean, what do you think? I think that would be a lot of fun. Anyway, let's move on to a car which I've talked about for so bloody long now. BMW M6. Now, this is also a car that I'm actively looking at and have been for a year, really. I'm pretty much, I'll be honest, I'm sort of in the financial position to get one of these now, taking into account the sort of maintenance, etc, etc, etc. I've done a lot of research and it's becoming a possibility. Again, the current situation we're in now has probably delayed this almost a year, because my plan was actually to get one of these this spring, use it for the summer, and then potentially sell it early spring, late winter in 2021, because again, they're cars that are riddled with very expensive issues, and it's unfortunately, as much as I think I would love it, not a car that I'd want to hold on to forever for that very reason. It'd be a car that I'd sort of own, do all the modifications I want to do to it, get it out of my system, and then sell on again, hopefully not losing too much cash. But I mean, this one is one that I've had to save for a while. These things don't really shift. No one wants them, and I'm sure even though this is advertised at 12 grand, it would probably exchange hands for closer to 10. I actually like this spec. I love this colour. Everyone I've asked actually to this day, my friends, say it's disgusting and it looks like what they put in the toilet. I'll leave that to your imagination. But I personally like it just because it's a bit different. Pretty boring interior. I think it's just a black interior, if I remember correctly. But it's got the all-important carbon trim, which is a must for me when I get one of these. I say when, optimistically, hopefully I will get one and I don't pussy out when push comes to shove. But again, with these, the only way I would ever be able to have an M6 is if it is not my only car, because again, there's lots of issues with them. They are obviously, being a V10, very expensive to put fuel in to insure. So the less mileage I could insure it for, the cheaper hopefully that would be. The list goes on really with these cars, and they do need constant upkeep, which is pricey because of that V10. And also because it was a car that was £80,000 back in the day. So it would have to be a second or even third car. Excuse me, my dream head right now would like to think that maybe this time in a year I would have this Z4 in a much better condition after sort of doing more garage time with it. Have an M6 as my sort of YouTube car, which is just fun, and it would be ridiculous, just believe me. and then something like an A45 as my daily driver. I think those three would be a very interesting lineup. So anyway, M6, I don't need to dwell on that too much, but this is just one of the many that I did have saved, but I believe lots of them have been sold now. Now this is a bit of a dark horse. I've got a couple of Boxsters saved on here. Now this one here is actually one that I wouldn't say tempted by, because again, I'm not going to go and buy a car in this current climate. And if I bought a Boxster, being realistic, it would replace this, because I don't want another older two-seater convertible sports car. So if I did end up buying a Boxster, it would be a replacement to the Z4. I think worthy replacement, maybe not. They're sort of in the same bracket, but something like this has got quite a lot more character, in my opinion, than the Z4. It's just a little bit older. This one with, again, controversial tan interior, almost yellow, black paintwork. I just think it would feel a bit more special to drive. And again, if I'm in the position later down the line where I've got several cars, something like this might do it for me a little bit more than this Z4, which I've had for 3 years. Anyway, obviously this isn't going anywhere anytime soon, because I'm not going to be changing cars anytime soon. But this one obviously saved, because it's £5,000, only 89,000 miles, just been serviced, and you can pick these up occasionally for this sort of price. And I do fancy something like that. This one is even more interesting, I've saved, for £8,000, but it's the anniversary edition. These are actually plaqued with a certain build number. There's a plaque, if I zoom in here, that silver thing there is a plaque, and it says, you know, car one of 1,900 or so that there are. They come with these grey wheels, they're exclusive, a chocolate brown interior, and I think matching roof colour, chocolate brown fabric roof. I think really stunning, really special, and potentially something that's a bit undervalued at the moment, given that it's only £8,000, which is a few grand more than sort of normal Boxster S's trade for, if not around the same. So yeah, waffle over, that's why that's in there. I think if I did try and get a Boxster, maybe it would be an anniversary edition if it was something of this cost. Right, let's move on into Dreamland then quickly. There's a couple of Ferraris here. 360, this one's saved really because it's so cheap, 48,000 for a Ferrari 360. It's got the wheels I like, it's got the Challenge grille on the back, and a cool sort of blue-black two-tone interior. This is left-hand drive though, and I think realistically I would never go for anything like that. Also, F1 gearbox, not really what you want on a 360 necessarily. But nonetheless, 48,000 for a Ferrari, which if I go through the listing, it is actually in pretty good condition. It's just left-hand drive. Next up is a car that's controversial. Everyone I've spoken to hates. I love Ferrari 456. It's a 5.5 litre V12, gated manual gearbox. This one certainly is, and it's four-seater. I mean, I think these are 47,000 now for a manual V12 Ferrari with 4 seats. My opinion is that these will be worth 6 figures somewhere down the line. Whether that takes 2 years, 3 years, 10, 20 years, I don't know. But there's just no way these are ever going to be worth certainly less than they are now. And I can only see these appreciating. So this is a car for me, the 456, that if I had £50,000 that I won in the lottery tomorrow, and I had it cash to waste, I would buy one of these and put it in the garage. Now I would obviously drive it as well, but I'd buy one of these as an investment, because I love this car, and I think something in 10 years that might be worth a lot more. So that's why that's there. I've got another one here which is even cheaper at 40,000, but I think that's an auto. Couple of Z4 coupes here. I've always had my eye on a Z4 coupe. I think they are although I love a roadster, there's just something a bit more unique about them. The shape is obviously a very unique shape, and I've saved a couple which are actually like my dream spec. This one here in I forget the colour, is it Sepang bronze or something? A colour that most people don't like again, but that with the black wheels I think looks really special in my opinion. And if I was going for a coupe, would probably get one in that sort of spec, or probably my favourite spec, this. Again, 5-spoke BBSs in black look great against the coupe, and in this colour as well, look fantastic. Now this one has got a cool interior too, probably a BMW individual, blue, black tone. Blue and black two-tone, that's what I meant, and piano black trim. So that is also quite a special and unique spec that I might go for. Another M6 save there, I don't really need to say too much about that. An Alpina Roadster. This is a car that I've been lusting after recently since doing a revisit of my Alpina video. And then my list wouldn't be complete without a couple of Z4Ms. As you can see, these were saved 6 weeks ago on my favourites, and they're still for sale. But yeah, this one in particular is pretty tasty. Black, red leather interior, and the sort of spec I would probably go for if I was to get a Z4M. I certainly would like to have a Z4M and or an Alpina Roadster S one day, somewhere down the line. Here's another personal dream car of mine, Ferrari 599. One of my all-time favourite Ferraris for 2 reasons. One, and the main reason being, it was the first Ferrari I ever had an experience in. My auntie lives in Dubai, in the United Arab Emirates, and she has a friend who at the time owned a Ferrari 599 the first time I visited. I think this was 2014, and he took me out in it, and obviously your first Ferrari experience is something you'll never forget, and therefore the 599 always shares a soft spot in my heart. Second reason being, my all-time dream car is a Ferrari Enzo, and the 599, to my best knowledge, basically shares the gearbox and the engine with the Enzo. Now I know they're not completely the same, but to be able to get that all wrapped up for 90 grand in a package, for a car that I think has so much road presence even now, this is a car I would love to own if I came into a bit of money one day and they were still this price, because again, probably not going to be worth any less in the future. Just a few more cars then. I've got an A35 saved on here because that is a car that I would like to have as my daily. I think for 31 grand, which is where they sort of roughly sit, it's just a bit too much money, and something like an A45 or that price point would be more realistic. I've got a 981 Boxster saved on here. I love the 981 platform, mainly because that Cayman S I drove. This is only the 2.7, but I think in a really tasty spec, yellow, black wheels, and I think a black interior. And a good price as well. The PDK gearbox, honestly, is beautiful, and I would love to own one of these at some point. Also a Golf R on here. Really not a Golf R fan, but this one I just loved, I remember, because of the red paintwork and the sort of, just this pretty unmolested spec. I think it was quite a pretty looking Golf R, if you can say that about a Golf. So that's why that one's saved there. X5 4.4 litre is saved here, 2 grand, and that's the exact reason. This was when I was looking at 7 Series as a project car, because the X5 was also something that made that shortlist. So that 12 weeks ago I saved that, and it's still for sale. Maybe I could knock him a grand. Another 981 S. This is the S, so slightly more powerful version of the one we just looked at that was yellow. Silver with red roof. I really like that combo, so that's why that was saved there. That's another M6. That's another Z4M Coupe, probably one of the nicest ones for sale at the moment, and that's pretty much why it's saved there. And lastly on my list is a Jaguar XJ 4.2 litre V8 for 2.5 grand. Again, saved primarily because of that series I was thinking about, where I buy the UK's cheapest V8. Something I still want to do in the future, and the Jag also made the shortlist. So that's all of the cars that I have currently saved in my Autotrader favourites. As you can see, there's a lot from a long time ago. There's a lot in between which I had to remove because they're sold, and there's those sort of few at the top which I did this morning, which are pretty current. So hopefully this hasn't been too long, and hopefully you found that interesting. Comment below what the car at the moment that you're looking at the most is. I go through phases, whether it's the M6, whether it's a Boxster, whether it's a Z4M. I go through phases of just becoming obsessed with these cars and end up with a long list of them saved at certain periods of time. So I want to know, guys, your sort of car that comes up the most in your favourites, if you look at your sales apps, or just off the top of your head, what is that one car right now that you just can't stop thinking about and wish that you owned? I'd love to know, because obviously we've got a wide demographic of audience here, and it'd be fascinating to hear some of your sort of favourite cars that you're looking at. And who knows, you suggesting or telling me some of yours might get me looking at those myself. So anyway, I'd love to know from you guys, so please comment below. Leave this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. It really helps the video to perform better for some reason. And I hope to see you guys very, very soon.